Hello, this is my film theory video, and I'm going to basically be going into two film theories today, going into them, explaining what the film theories are, then bringing some film examples into the picture, analysing them, basically describing what they are, and what sort of significance they are in the filming world. So the first theory I'm going to go into is the semiotics theory. It's probably going to be the most, I'd say, simplest one out of the two, because the other one's quite in-depth and complex, but I kind of love that kind of stuff, so that's why I'm doing it. Okay, let's jump into the first film theory I'm doing, which is semiotics. Now, semiotics is the studies of signs. So, the guy who actually invented this was Ferdinand Saussure. He demonstrated that signs can display information without even having to display any sort of text or any sort of hinting towards it. That's because now, with this day and age, well, it's always have been really, that our brains are so complex that by seeing a certain sign, a certain person, certain object, it could easily signify something easy in our minds, differently from it. So, I'm now going to go through and look at a film clip from 300. I'm using 300 because I'm using the scene which is, this is
Xerxes conquers and
basically
controls
where one of the
everything.
Persian messengers comes along and threatens the king of Sparta about
so
saying,
massive,
if you don't
it shakes the
actually
ground with its march. So
pay
vast,
up with
it
your
drinks the
ransom,
rivers
you need to
dry.
do this, you need to do that,
All
give
the
some
god King
offerings,
Xerxes
then we are going
requires
to
is this
potentially cause a lot of problems for you. Now, walking through the scenes, basically just explaining to him about what's going to happen, and he's trying to be nice. You can see from his body language that he's not being aggressive, but he's being aggressive in a threatening way, but in a nice way, if you can understand how I mean. The way that he is, his body language positioned, he's not standing up very straight, he's not exactly on edge or anything like that. Now, after a while, the King of Sparta actually decides to start talking and starts to, instead of being originally when he was just walking by, very stone cold, very off the whole conversation, now he's actually starting to talk, he's actually starting to move around, and you can see from his body language that he's not happy. His body language, he is very aggravated and he's going to get very violent. And from the scene building up, well, you can actually see him actually doing that. This is just a small example of one of the actual scenes I'm doing. I'm going to do a lot more scenes. This is just this one scene I was going to use for semiotics because it's showing through body language and through signs of how, even though you may not see it through film, you're still going to get that sort of inkling. A lot of people, when they see a film, they can tell if someone's a bad guy. Why is that? Because of the way he walks, the way that he talks, the way that he's portrayed. That's how semiotics work. It's a sign. If someone just walks into a street and there is nothing else to it, you're not going to be able to tell if that guy is even a significant character, good guy, protagonist, you're not going to know. But with the way that films have been done, they use semiotics. They use these semiotics to prove well, not to prove, but to basically just show what they're going to be. So right now you can see here the Spartan king is now actually drawing his sword to the Persian messenger, and his body language is showing you he's very violent, very upfront, and he's not going to deal with any of these. He's not going to deal with the Persians, he's not going to sit down and let his people be slaves. He's going to stand up and fight against it. You can see there. So that is the beginning.
Madness. This is Sparta!
And let's go into another film clip of ours. I'm going to do the Star Wars one from A New Hope. The reason why I'm doing this is the intro for Darth Vader. Now, I like this a lot because the music is quite interesting here, and I'm going to play the music in the background. Now, when he walks through the door, the music gets a lot more intense. The music sounds dark and eerie, sounds as if someone bad has just turned up. Darth Vader, of course. And that breathing really does get some people down their spines.
What have you done with those plans?
Those 5 to 10 seconds of him just entering the room, the dark music, the breathing, which could, it's just not very nice, all of that is just already an implication for this guy is a bad guy. He's not a good guy, he's a bad guy. Now, technically, through the Star Wars series, Darth Vader is... it's a bit of a sketchy subject. But in this sort of context, he is a bad guy, he is here to kill people, and he is here to be a badass, but a bad badass. That's just from the sound. You want to go into the visual side of things, he's walking in with pure black. He's made out of metal currently, because of his condition and his body and so on, back in previous Star Wars episodes. But that's irrelevant. But, yeah, he looks sinister. He looks like something that you're not going to see every day. You're not going to see this guy dancing around in bloody rainbows and unicorns and dancing around skipping to Let It Go. No, you're going to be seeing this guy in the darkest depths of the world, and this guy's going to be there at every alleyway in the pissing rain with... yeah, it's just a dark look. That's what I like about it. It's just a dark look. They've been able to get this sign for, this guy is bad, he's evil, there you go. He's evil, so there's nothing else to it. He is going to be the evil guy. And that's how I like how they've done it with semiotics. They've actually made it really good for what it is. Literally, that is, the 10-20 seconds is all I needed just to explain that, and how films use semiotics so well, like in real life. If you don't have semiotics in a film, you can't get things across. You can still get the film through, but it's not going to be as good. It's going to be terrible. Because if your film is so bad that you can't determine who is a good guy, who is a bad guy, whereabouts you're in the scene, if this scene is any sort of significance. If the scene is a significant scene, you'll be having some very interesting action background music, or if it's more of one of those lovey-dovey feely films or scenes, you're going to have some nice soft music in the background while they start presenting their feelings and emotions and all that stuff. So, yeah, semiotics for you. Hello, this is part 2 for my film theory. Now, this is the second film theory we're looking into, which is psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis is probably going to be the more in-depth one than semiotics. I found semiotics to be quite simple and basic. It's just really science, really. Psychoanalysis, however, is a bit of a different thing on the schedule. It's a little bit different when you think about it. Now, psychoanalysis is basically the study of the mind, the study of how the mind works, and different mindsets, different thoughts. When we go into A Clockwork Orange, the reason why I like using A Clockwork Orange for this is because there are many things which may seem different on the outside to the inside. For example, Clockwork Orange is about a bunch of guys that, basically the main character is Alex, and he's not the greatest of people. He's quite a violent person. He actually ends up doing some very bad acts of violent sexual nature, etc. So rape, murder, violence, etc. It's not, there are bad things in the category. Now, the way that they actually portray Alex is very interesting, because they portray him as a very, very formal guy. He looks very, he's got his top hat, he's got his shirt, he's got his blazer on, he's got his trousers, He doesn't look like a thug. Like, if you compare him to a thug nowadays, you can kind of tell when a thug, like, I'm not sure if you judge around, but you can kind of see when someone looks like a thug. But with Alex and the Clockwork Orange, you couldn't really tell him. And the other thing is that his mindset, the way he talks, he doesn't look or act like someone that's very violent. But then he kind of breaks out in these ways of anger, and he's very violent to people. Now, the author of Clockwork Orange was Anthony Burgess. Now, Anthony Burgess, he wrote the film in the 1960s. Now, this was prior to, this is after his wife actually had a very serious attack. Now, she was attacked, robbed, and actually raped by some US soldiers that had been staying after World War II. Now, in this film, there's a lot of acts of rape, violence, and robbing. Now, you may not even, he may not even agree with this, but the unconscious mind will already imply that he's writing about things that happened to his wife. Now, he could have been writing this to us because when we see it or read it, we're going to be feeling the same sort of struggle, the same sort of emotion he's going to feel. I mean, if you read something about someone getting raped or attacked, someone, it's not going to be something you're going to sit there and laugh at. It's going to be something you're going to feel quite bad about and feel, oh God, that really sucks. Like, something like that. Obviously, he's going to feel a lot more than we are, but he's kind of just dragging it out there, just saying, look, this world's got dark sides to it. I've experienced these dark sides. This is why I'm writing this. There's other reasons. I mean, his wife had a miscarriage afterwards. He says, Alex actually uses the term how, oh, this is a wicked world and stuff. Like, again, basically just showing that the author isn't exactly in the right... Well, he's in the right state of mind, but he's not... There's parts of him which aren't fully there. I think everyone can agree there is a part inside them that they're not fully there with. There's a part which makes them a bit, not crazy, but just over the edge. And I think with this book he's written, I think that is what he was looking to do. He was looking to get a lot of stress, a lot of emotions out, a lot of feelings out. Putting it onto paper, writing it all up, publishing it, and showing the world exactly what deep down inside he is, what he's thinking. I mean, for example, like, this is completely relevant, but Robin Williams. He was a comedian. He was a very well-known person. Everyone loved him. He committed suicide. He was depressed. Very depressed. Underneath that smiling face was somebody that was wanting to end their life. Things like these, like the unconscious mind. You can't see it for yourself, but sometimes others can, some can't. I mean, this is the kind of thing I want about, the unconscious mind. There's two sides to one thing. There's the conscious side, which everyone sees, like what you're seeing right now, and then there's the unconscious mind, which is deep inside here. I may be able to see it, I may not, but that's basically what it is. The unconscious mind and conscious mind, there are two sorts of mindsets to it. Now, hopefully I haven't confused you too much on that, so now I'm going to go into the actual how Clockwork Orange is, what the story is, and also some of the ways that Alex, the anti-hero, is portrayed. Bear with me 1 second. Now, Clockwork Orange basically is about Alex, the anti-hero, and what happens is he's a very violent person. He conflicts numerous acts of rape, violence, robbing, the whole lot. He's just a violent person. Now, he was originally not getting caught out, but eventually he does get caught by the police, and they actually conduct an experiment on him. This experiment is basically a mental sort of experiment, and what they were trying to do is they were trying to curb his violence, because he's very violent. Now, also when he listened to music, he'd get a form of pleasure out of it, but he'd also get a form of violence out of it. For example, when he is walking with his fellow droogies, as he calls them, basically his gang, he's very, very angry, but he's keeping it inside him. Now, he basically quotes saying, I hear something out of the stereo. I hear a piece of music that I like. He likes classical music, he likes Beethoven. He hears that, and then suddenly he just erupts with anger, gets his cane out, he hits the other droogie, George. He actually decides to just quickly plop him in the nuts, and then decides to kick him into the river. And then the other guy, I can't remember his name now, Dims, I think, goes for Alex. Alex reluctantly ends up dodging his attack, causing him to go in the river as well, and then he actually stabs him with a knife. Originally, he was walking very stone cold. He quoted, I was feeling very, very angry inside, but I was able to cope with my anger. As soon as that music was released, I released all of that anger out on everything that was making me angry, and yeah. So, from there, that's really the kind of pleasure he got out of it. And eventually, he can't actually gain pleasure from the music, and obviously can't gain the violence side of things, actually becomes defenseless and helpless. Now, the way that Anthony Burgess portrays Alex is quite interesting. Now, Alex doesn't look like your regular thug. Now, he is basically dressed up as a top hat, cane, white shirt, white jeans, white blazer, and very, very formal kind of person. But he's a thug. He doesn't really look like the kind of person to be a thug. Now, the reason why I think Burgess did this is because he's basically saying, don't judge somebody on how they look. Regardless of how they look, regardless of how they act, they can still be capable of doing certain things. For example, in this case, Alex. He looks like someone who is fairly wealthy, someone that is fairly well spoken. He is fairly well spoken, but he's a very violent person and has committed numerous amounts of horrific acts. So basically, the author's basically letting out to people through an unconscious thought, saying, look, doesn't matter what people look like, they can still be capable of doing anything. I mean, I might look like an anti-fuck to you, but I could always be capable of doing some really serious shit. But okay, we're gonna edit that out. We're editing this bit out. Okay, so shh. But basically, with what he's trying to say is that anyone could be capable of anything, and judging people on how the way they look and how they talk is not going to be the full test on what they do. If you get what I mean. Basically, Alex, regardless of how he looks, is still that violent person inside. And another reason why I think Clockwork Orange is a very good example for this was because of when it was released, it caused an uproar. Caused not a lot of uproar because it was actually a film which glorified sex and violence. Back in the days of the 1970s, this was not a very common thing. A lot of films were very basic and very... You wouldn't have any sort of nudity, you wouldn't have any sort of females having any sort of exposure there. You wouldn't have violence, you'd have, you know, your comedies, you'd have your dramas, you'd have your romance films, but you wouldn't have anything which is along the lines of Clockwork Orange. Now, because Burgess didn't have very long to live when he was writing Clockwork Orange, I believe that's the reason why he just thought, screw it, I'm feeling all of this. Very, very serious amount of pain inside of me building up. I'm going to release it onto paper, see and show the world how I feel in a way of the story, and see how people think. So the ego is a fairly important piece of the mind. It basically balances the two, like I've explained with the superego and the ID. Now, if you don't actually have the ego balancing, there will be problems, because actually your mind would start to